my firm was hired to conduct a survey based upon the four topics that there have been programs on recently: immigration, the energy policy, national security, and the trades issues. And so what we did was we conducted a statewide survey of a little bit on our methodology. It was 400 people we surveyed in the state of Wisconsin who are likely voters in the November general election. So these were people, we got their names from the election registration lists, and also asked them about their probability of likelihood to vote in the November election to confirm that these are a good representative sample of who's going to be voting in November. The survey was done at the end of January, early February. And what I'm going to do, we asked 2 questions on each of the 4 topics. So I'll just kind of go through and show you the results for each of the 2 questions on each of the topics, and then turn it over to the panel to talk about it. Since we're getting the Democratic and Republican perspective from the campaigns here, I'll also try to highlight, the slides are going to show you the overall results for each of these questions. But I will also try to highlight from my notes where there are big differences among the people who identify themselves as Democrats or Republicans or independents in our survey, so you can kind of get a sense of where the differences lie in the different parts of the electorate. So the first question, I don't know if you can see the slide all the way in the back, but our first question on federal policy on immigration asked people, please tell me which of the 3 statements I read comes closest to your view about what government policy should be towards undocumented workers already in the United States. And so quite a few of these questions, people were asked to choose from a number of statements to get a sense of where they fell on the policy spectrum. And the options people chose from were, we should send all illegal immigrants back to their home country. You'll see on the slide 18% of respondents agreed with that position more than the others. That kind of the range there was Democrats only 10% agreed with that statement versus 22% for Republicans, and independents lied fairly close to Republicans at 24%. The second option was we should have a guest worker program that allows immigrants to remain in the United States to work, but only for a limited amount of time. 35% chose that as the option that reflected most of their personal opinion. Again, it kind of ranged 23% of Democrats, 48% of Republicans, independents lied right in the middle of that range. And the fourth option was we should allow law-abiding, undocumented immigrants to remain in the country and eventually qualify for U.S. citizenship if they meet certain requirements. That received the largest response. 45% of the likely voters chose that option, a high of 64% of Democrats versus only 29% of Republicans. And again, independents were roughly in the middle at 40%. And then the second question on immigration policy asked about state enforcement of immigration laws. This came up in the last year or so, as you probably recall, where Arizona in particular wanted to take over some of the enforcement of immigration laws. So we asked people, several states have passed or are considering laws that will give the police the power to question people about their legal status in the country and require people to produce documents verifying their status if asked. Do you think state and local governments should have a role in drafting and enforcing immigration laws? And here a large majority, 70% of the respondents agreed with this. Even a majority of Democrats, 51% agreed. Republicans agreed with it 92% of the time. And those opposed were Democrats 45% of the time. Republicans said no to this question only 6% of the time. And again, independents lied fairly close in this case to the overall responses of 70% to 26%. So the next part of the survey dealt with developing energy technologies and investment in that part of our infrastructure. And the first question we asked here, and these 2 questions, I think one interesting thing you'll note is that there's quite a bit of difference in how the same people answered the two questions. So the first question asked people, it kind of gave them a statement first. Supporters of government investment in new energy technologies like wind and solar power say public money is needed to jumpstart innovations that will reduce America's dependence on foreign oil and create new green jobs. Opponents say these investments are a waste of taxpayer dollars since these businesses cannot compete and succeed without government assistance. Which of these positions is closer to your own? And you'll see that the electorate was almost evenly divided between the two, with 49% saying that government investment was necessary to develop cleaner energy solutions, 47% saying the marketplace can produce new technologies without government intervention. And here we had the Democrats and the Republicans very polarized here, almost the exact reverse of each other, that 76% of Democrats chose the first statement to only 18% of them choosing the second. Republicans, it was 20% choosing the first statement, 75% choosing the other one, exact opposite. And independents then, as you can figure out, were almost evenly divided, 47 to 51. I will note, though, that on this one, women were actually 14% more likely to choose the first statement that government investment was necessary. And that's true of both of these questions, that women were much more likely to choose kind of the government involvement option versus the other option. And then we asked a second question, do you think government policies aimed at fostering the creation of green jobs can make a significant contribution to the improvement of the U.S. economy? So while in the first one we actually had about even people saying government investment was necessary versus just the marketplace, here we had a much larger number who did, though, say that the government involvement can have a contribution to the economy, with 59% choosing saying yes, 35% saying no. Again, we had, some, fairly broad diversity between the Democrats and the Republicans. 87% of Democrats said yes to only 8% saying no. But on the other end, the Republicans, while they were more of them chose no, it was by not as large a margin on the first one, that a third, 33%, still said yes, the government policies aimed at fostering creation of green jobs can make a contribution to the economy, and then a majority of independents also said yes to produce a fairly strong majority on this question. And again, women were 14% more likely to say yes rather than no. So our next topic we have two questions on national security. And the first one is, national security has traditionally been thought of in terms of military strength. Recently, some people have suggested that in the 21st century, a strong economy and sustainable environment are equally important. Which comes closer to your view? We had, it was, again, very evenly split answers. 49% choosing we should spend less on the military and more on domestic needs, with 45% choosing we need to keep military spending at current or increased levels. I'll note here how close this is, that the margin of error on the survey, I didn't talk about that under methodology, is just a little bit under 5%. So, people's answers here are within the margin of error and is, very close, evenly divided here. But again, the underlying numbers tell us that 70% of Democrats choose the first answer. Similar, 69% of Republicans choose the second answer, and then with just a bare majority, 50% of independents choose the first answer, that we should spend less on the military and more on domestic needs. The next question, though, will kind of will diverge a little bit from this idea I've emphasized about how much there's this division between Democrats and Republicans, and show you where independent attitudes really come into play. And the question was, which of the following do you think represents the biggest threat to the United States' position in the world? And the people chose between economic competition from China and others, reduced capacity of our military, or domestic issues like education and infrastructure. And we had 38% of the overall voters choosing competition from China, 12% reduced capacity of our military, and 46% choosing domestic issues like education and infrastructure. And as you probably would not be too surprised to find, Democrats chose the last option 66% of the time. Republicans chose the first option 45%. That was their greatest. But what really stands out here is that 49% of independents chose China as the biggest issue. And this is one of the we'll see this in the last couple questions that have to deal with free trade as well, which kind of brings in the idea of China. But that independents, these were the three questions where independents actually chose one of the topics more strongly than Democrats or Republicans did. So our last two questions dealt with trade issues, and the first one has to do with voters' views on NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And the question read, as the U.S. pursues NAFTA-style free trade agreements around the globe, supporters point to increased opportunities for American businesses, while opponents characterize the deals as job killers. On balance, do you think free trade agreements have helped the U.S. economy? And as I mentioned in the last question, this is the trade issue kind of diverges from the other questions in that the two parties there's less division between the two parties or people identified with one party or the other within their answers on this, and there are also particularly strong views of for the independents, even stronger than the partisans on this topic. Overall, 34% of the electorate said yes, free trade has helped the U.S. help the economy. 51% said no, it has hurt the economy. A majority of both Democrats and independents, 51% of Democrats and actually 59% of independents chose no, free trade has hurt the U.S. economy. And even 46% of Republicans, which was actually greater than the number who said yes, 46% of Republicans also chose no, free trade has hurt the U.S. economy. And then our second question on trade had to do with tariffs to protect U.S. manufacturers. And the people were asked, some people support placing tariffs on imports to protect U.S. manufacturers. Others are opposed, saying tariff risks starting a trade war and increasing the prices American consumers pay for imported products. Do you support or oppose the use of tariffs to promote the consumption of U.S.-made products? 51% said they support tariffs in this circumstance. 32% said they oppose. Again, numbers very similar to before. 54% of Democrats said they support tariffs, 58% of independents, and the largest share of Republicans, 46%, said they support tariffs compared to 41% opposing it.